Ready Player One is hitting theaters soon, but is it game over for Steven Spielberg's new movie? We'll tell you right here on Screen Junkies News. I'm Dan Murrell.
And I am Roth Cornet.
And we're here to talk about Ready Player One.
Ready Player One. And we have one reader of the novel, Mr. Dan Murrell, and myself. I am a fresh, virgin-eyed watcher of the film because I came in with no preconceptions at all.
There you go.
There you go. So here's first, reader.
Well, as a reader, I would say, first of all, if you are a fan of the book and you're expecting, because Ernest Cline, who wrote the novel, is co-credited as a screenwriter, if you're expecting a straight adaptation of the novel, that's not what this is. That's not a bad thing. I just want to set expectations out. If you're going in, you love the book, you're expecting to see on the screen exactly what you read, this is not that. It's not a thing like things were changed or or cut for time, but there are very big differences in this movie and the book. Again, not a negative, but it's a thing that I think people should know going in to adjust your expectation, to know that you're not going to get exactly what you've read if you're a fan of the book. The movie is very much its own thing. It's put through the filter of Steven Spielberg, which, I mean, come on. But also, there are things with the book that you have to streamline, that you have to change. I think the movie goes beyond that. Things are changed, kind of new, completely new for the movie that aren't in the book at all. The timeline of things are shifted around. So this is not a straight adaptation if you are a fan.
Yeah. As a Steven Spielberg fan as well, this is your favorite director. Where do you think this sits in his body of work?
I couldn't answer that right now. I mean, it's
you have to rank it right now.
I've seen this one time yesterday versus 40 years of work from Steven Spielberg. This was kind of a return to me of his sort of ability to see things cinematically and to paint a picture cinematically that he knows is really going to impress an audience, because there are sequences in this film that I thought were spectacularly done, and you could tell were done by someone who just has an inherent sense of what an audience will connect to and how to thrill them, how to manipulate them. People call Spielberg the great manipulator. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
He knows how to do action. He knows how to do these huge sequences. And kind of with this world of the Oasis, the rules are kind of out the window. This reminded me a lot, actually, of AI, where he had the ability to kind of create this future world without any constraints, without any conception of what can and can't happen. This is like that for me. It's like this. He just is kind of given free reign to create this world, and I loved what he did with the Oasis and the action sequences in this film. I'm a huge fan of Spielberg, but his later filmography, the last 10 years or so, has been very hit or miss for me. This one was a hit. I'm not going to say it was. I loved it, as we'll go into some stuff later, but that's really what struck me first and foremost. Was they got the right director, because he really knows how to do spectacle, and that's what so much of this movie relies on.
Yeah, he is a master craftsman. He really understands the tools of cinema. He understands how to evoke a particular emotion from you. This is something I had wondered about with the marketing materials. It's a very luscious world. It's fantastic world building. It feels like pure fantasy, which is exactly what it should feel like. And I had wondered, I thought, wow, some of these effects look a little degraded, but actually once you're in it in the cinema, it doesn't read that way at all. And you sort of justify it in your mind because there's economic levels of ability, and you start to imagine that those who have higher levels of ability might have a little more leeway. He really plays with the world. It's very Spielbergian in the sense that there is a sense of whimsy. There is, he's this guy that when he's telling, especially in his older films, if you look at the films like E.T. and things like that, there's a very childlike sense. And not just in the sense of whimsy, but also that from a child's perspective, creativity has primacy, right? There's nothing more divine than to be creative. And adults and the adult world is bad. And it's very black and white that way. And in this film, the characters are broadly drawn in that sense. The ones who are bad, the corporate bad guy is such a corporate bad guy, and the creators are purely good, right? Yeah. They make mistakes. Certainly Mark Rylance, who I think has the best, I mean, my God, this actor, he is the best performance in the film, is the creator of the Oasis. For me, I think Mark Rylance is one of the actors of our time. You can disagree.
Yeah.
Ben Mendelsohn, who plays the baddie, is
he's great,
wonderful, and eats it up, but not in such a way that it's distracting. But I think the other thing is like, yeah, it's just kind of got a childlike view of the world. There's not a ton of room for nuance in this, and that's okay. It's got a ultimately message that I enjoy. It's a message that I mostly agree with. It's about what's important in life. These are things that we need to hear. It doesn't fully land with decisiveness.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's a little too long.
Yeah.
And Spielberg, again, if he has an Achilles heel, and he has a few, but one of his big ones is not allowing for subtlety. And so I think this movie has a really good message that then is, at the end, just put on the end of a sledgehammer that he then hits you in the face with. It's like, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand.
But if
you don't have
didn't,
to. But if you didn't, then you will.
I'm going to tell you.
He's going to tell us what it is. So I do feel like that actually undercuts it a little bit. It does feel its length for me toward the end of the movie as it's kind of wrapping things up. There were certain things like, I know you don't have to put a bow on that. I understand it. Mark Rylance, okay. Because for me, he was one of the things in this movie that I did not connect to.
Really?
No, I think what it is that he is such a particular actor, and he has a manner. He's very mannered, and he has just a wavelength that if you connect to it, you're gonna love it, and that if you don't connect to it, you're not gonna love it. And for me, Mark Rylance, he was so kind of putting on an affect that it took me out of what he was doing, and I instead was just watching. I did not read
that as an affect at all.
To me, and maybe it's because I saw the BFG, and to me it's the same thing he did in the BFG.
Oh, I didn't see the BFG.
Just from what I've seen with Mark Rylance and Steven Spielberg films, particularly going back to BFG, which is the last one he did, it just seemed like more of the same.
Well, he was in Bridge of Spies as a quite different character.
Well, okay, but I guess I saw BFG, I saw this movie, and it just seemed like the same thing. And what he gave that character to me was a distraction. It didn't enhance that character, which is a shame because it worked toward the end.
Yeah.
And I feel like if he'd hit those notes at the end and had kind of modulated that performance a little bit, I don't know, something didn't quite connect with me. I liked the character. I liked what the character had to say. I liked kind of the traits that they're hinting at and the importance and why he did what he did. Like, I thought it was a great character. The performance just didn't quite work for me. I just wasn't on the same page.
So to be clear, he plays Holiday, who is the creator of the Oasis. And one of the key messages in the film, I think, is about the desire, well, again, he'll let you know if you don't get it. It's the desire to connect, our failure to connect, the tools that we create in order to reach greater connection often become the barriers to it. We certainly see that today with things like social media, where that was meant to be a tool to connect, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it's a barrier. The Oasis is a metaphor for all of that. And Mark Rylance's character, for me, I mean, like, they're in a shitty world, so they want to escape it, right? So you get that. But Mark Rylance's character, for me, was the one that actually embodied that more than the two leads, because Spielberg is very old Hollywood, and he cast, instead of really awkward and maybe not that good looking kids in their leads, he cast insanely ungodly, beautiful, good looking kids, and they're great. You know, it's Tye Sheridan and Olivia Cooke.
Yeah.
And then he does this thing with Olivia Cooke, which is so old Hollywood, which is they give her this slight, very subtle, actually kind of cool looking birthmark, and that is meant to be the thing that's like, oh, she's hideous. You know, it's just, they did the same thing on Bates Motel with Olivia Cooke. They give her this one little oxygen thing, and it's like, oh, I can't look at her. I mean, she's this ridiculously beautiful woman. So the two of them, I never felt the fulfillment of wishing you were someone else and then coming into self-acceptance, because they were kind of cool in both worlds.
Yeah, I rolled my eyes at that. That's another element that just didn't work. And I think I even, going back to when this started, said, boy, I hope they don't just cast two Hollywood kids in this, and then because that's another thing, and that's one thing where again movies don't have to live up to the books. But one of the things I did like about the book was the fact that in the real world these were not conventionally attractive people.
Right.
Wade and Artemis were not conventionally attractive people, and that was part of what kind of was led to their insecurity, particularly about being in the real world. And in this movie, it's not quite
that
so much.
land.
It's a very Hollywood thing to do.
For me, Mark Rylance filled that hole.
I don't know. I just felt like there are traits of that character that could have been done more subtly, and I think that he kind of played up on the downbeats and played into the things that could have, in a different actor's hands, filled the lines in without just like being so, I don't want to go too far into it to let people find it for themselves. But for me, he kind of was playing up traits that I think the character would have been better served by allowing to meld into him and allowing people to kind of draw their own conclusions instead of making him so far one direction. Which just didn't quite work.
Which brings me to Spielberg as a director, which is that these are somewhat thinly drawn characters. So as much as you are invested in the world and it's really interesting to be there, and I felt very taken on the journey, right?
It is. It's a journey. That's what this movie relies on, and again, that's why it was smart to get Spielberg, because they're not bad characters, but they're certainly not deep and complex
they're
characters.
Not.
This
they're
is
not.
About the adventure. This is about the journey, and in a lesser director's hands, if it had been done poorly, if the visual style wasn't what it was, and if he wasn't able to kind of propel this thing, and the inventiveness behind some of these set pieces is incredible. That's what this movie relies on, and luckily it's Spielberg, and he executes it.
He executes it phenomenally, and that's why the movie works. But if you're looking to be sort of hit in the gut by these deeper messages, I think why you maybe aren't, because A, he's really just telling them to you, but B is because you can't fully connect with these characters. If I was able to feel, because they are quite broad, if I was able to feel the amount of empathy that I probably would if they really cast awkward kids as the real versions, I think your heart would be opened in a slightly different way, and you would really feel the contrast, and you would relate to that desire, that really deep desire to just live in someone else's skin, and then the reckoning that comes when you have to accept your limitations.
And they do that a little bit with the supporting cast when you kind of meet the real world personalities of the other avatars, and it's kind of, for me, that was a missed opportunity. Like you could have. I get the reality of Hollywood and why you kind of couldn't do that, but at the same time, maybe you could have tried doing it.
I mean, I love Olivia Cook. She's in Thoroughbreds right now.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the actors they cast. That was one of my major things with the film. It just seemed like a missed opportunity. And again, a way to subtly say the things that you then go on to kind of hammer at the audience at the end of the movie. I do want to broach one thing, which is kind of the elephant in the room. The nostalgia.
Yeah.
Part of it is, and it was what I was worried about, and it plays it too cute. There's a few times where like you see a thing and then they say the name of the thing. I'm like, I get it. You don't have to name the thing that you're showing me. But also, it didn't bother me. But I think going in, what you have to know is, if you have a problem with the nostalgia now, if you already have this thing in your head of like, well, I hate it because it uses nostalgia for everything, like that's the conceit of the movie.
Yeah, if you don't want that.
If you don't want that, then this is probably not the movie for you. If you think that, like, well, I just don't want all this cheap, things from the past thrown at me. Like, that's what the entire movie's based around. That's what the story is about. So if you have a problem with that, then I would just say going in, this is probably not the movie for you. However, what I did like is it with few exceptions, it didn't feel cheap in the sense that this is a story about a culture that has basically atrophied.
Yeah.
And everyone has gone insular, and they're not that's kind of the story, is they're not generating new culture. It's about a creator who lived in the past, who created a world made of things from the past for people to live into that everyone got sucked into. And so, if you complain that this movie uses nostalgia, that's kind of the point of the movie. And I think the movie addresses that and actually has something meaningful to say about it. It
Yeah.
doesn't just ignore it.
I agree. And adding to that, it does actually make sense to me now, having seen the film. I hadn't read the book, why he's nostalgic for that time period. That's when he was a child.
Yeah.
And this is a character that never grew up in so many ways. He just never grew up, and he never sort of embraced his ability to live a real adult life and make real adult decisions. You know, he cut himself off from the rest of the world, and he cut himself off from himself to live in this fantasy. And I think you're right. It is saying something about a world in which, as much as it's celebrating creativity, no one's really, you have infinite ability to be creative, and you're just stuck in the past. He is stuck in regret. Halliday is stuck in regret, and he's stuck in a mental loop of what could have been, and a lot of people face that, and he needs these young kids to break it for him.
Yeah. I didn't find it cheap. Again, with very few exceptions of just like, yeah, I know you don't have to name the thing that it is.
One or two times I found it distracting, and then I sort of had to actually just tell myself to let it go and embrace it, because this is what this movie is.
Yeah.
And because it does address it, and because it does have something to say, that's fine. But are they going to member all these berries? There were some member berries that I thought were obscure.
There's a berry for everybody. I don't know. I was thinking yesterday, I honestly don't know. I was trying to think about, like, is this movie going to be a hit? And is it going to be well received by, not just a general audience, but by, kind of the core, hardcore fan audience? And I don't know either way. I could see this movie being a huge hit. I could see this movie being a disappointment. I could see fans loving this movie, and I could see fans hating this movie. And I honestly don't know which way they're going to go. And I think part of it is because it does deal with and reference so many of these other properties. I've seen people already outraged, like posting screenshots from the trailer of the Iron Giant in battle. It's like, this is like, oh, if this is what you think the Iron Giant is, then obviously I hate this movie already. Yeah. It's like, if you give it context and let it speak in the movie, again, this is about people co-opting pop culture things for their own purposes. So, I feel like there's some people that already see things they love and they hate already how it's being used. There's one sequence in this movie in particular, and you'll know it when you see the movie, when you see it, that is my favorite in the movie.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
It is my absolute favorite sequence in the movie. However, I think there's going to be a segment of the audience that sees that and just is going to think that it is blasphemy. How dare you do this? And I don't know which side is going to win out. I think it is going to be a divisive movie, because I think that there's going to be some people that like how they've kind of remixed these images, and I think that there's some people that are going to view the film as co-opting it and using it for their own means, and they're going to be offended by that. So this is for the first time in a while, I don't know where this movie is going to fall on the spectrum. I don't know how much people are going to like it, if they're going to like it, and if it's even going to make a lot of money. I could see so many different ways, because nostalgia is such a potent thing for people.
Sure.
You don't know how people are going to react when a movie like this comes along and kind of says, like, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use this, and we're going to remix it and do it in interesting ways.
I think it's also interestingly in an argument with itself, the movie, and maybe this is something about Spielberg and his own internal life, because in a way it's literally pop currency. Yeah. So it's reflecting our world in the sense that your ability to recall at will some random obscure piece of pop culture reference is an actual currency for you in this world, in the Oasis.
It's people's jobs.
It's people's jobs. And so that, and there is both a celebration of that, and I think a comment on how maybe that's not so great, because it does leave you a little atrophied and stuck, and with a mental focus on you're missing what's real. But anyway, I don't know how people will respond. I will say I think it's a fun movie. I think it's a great ride. I think if you let go and give yourself over to it, it will entertain you. It will engage you. It certainly wants you to think about certain things. And overall, I enjoyed it.
I had a good time with it. I enjoyed it. It is not a movie that I didn't have issues with, but I also think that it's popcorn filmmaking is difficult, because when you're doing something on this scale, I'm sure for some people are going to react to this movie the way that I reacted to Jurassic World, and just like there's nothing to it. These characters, how could you like it? I don't understand it. And I get that, and I'm sure people are like, how could you say you like this movie and you didn't like that one? I can't explain it either. I do think that this movie does draw its characters better than kind of the average, just mindless, brainless blockbuster.
Yeah, definitely.
I think there is more effort put into the story. The performances, even though Mark Rylance's wasn't for me, I'm not going to say it was a bad performance. It wasn't choices that I connected to, but the performances in general, I think, are very strong. The story's fine. It keeps you going. It keeps you propelled. Like I said, it doesn't really feel its length until the end. So I agree. This is a movie that I enjoyed. I would recommend that people see it. I don't know if everyone's going to like it, but I liked it.
I liked it, and
so-
I would say I would recommend you give it a shot. And it's you never can predict how people are going to respond. Hey, we'll see.
We'll see. So that's a recommendation from both of us on Ready Player One. It comes out next week. When you see it, let us know what you thought of it in the comments below. Really excited to hear the feedback on this. And Roth, we'll be here forever. We'll be here forever reviewing everything.
We'll
right?
do the things.
We'll do the things.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.